السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. How's everyone doing? So I think I mentioned yesterday. Let me see. All right. I think I mentioned yesterday that this stream is mainly around jinn, but obviously, it's kind of a open forum for different topics as well. I'm going to show you guys some slides I was working on over the past few months, really, and never really got to finish it, but at the very least, it can help kind of demonstrate some visuals about our world. Let me know if you guys can hear me. Yeah. Some of the most amazing topics are from the unseen. Salam alaikum, untold stories. Salam alaikum, soaring bird. Peace be upon you. Salam alaikum, ARMBV. Is audio doubled? That's weird. Salam Haji Amzar. Antigogo, I'm not sure what you mean. I hope I'm not being echoed, but yeah. Hey, then Bill Basie, I have a whole slide on that. You're asking, what's your opinion on the meeting of the two seas? The meeting of the two seas actually central to all of this stuff. That's why it's mentioned. Do you remember, Haytham, in the Quran, the story of Musa and Khidr? Allah says that Musa says that I will travel to the meeting of the two seas or continue a long time. For a long time, I mean, that might actually be a good place to start, actually, about that. The meeting of the two seas. Salam alaikum, untold stories. Salam, ARMBV. Salam, everybody in the chat. Hope you guys are doing well. This part of the world, it's Mother's Day. It's kind of like a quiet Sunday. All right. Yeah. Yeah, he would continue for a long time. Because Haytham Bill Basie, this is like a portal, in a way, to a world where time works very, very differently. Okay, let me just see if I can bring that up for you. Let me show you how things came about over the past almost year when I've been looking into this stuff. Because we all have a certain narrative, right, about the events in the Quran. So I was like, okay, I want to find out, where is this place? Where is the meeting of the two seas? Because it's mentioned alongside the most mentioned person in the Quran by name, which is Musa. So if you go to a map of the earth, and we don't really have a real map of the earth, but for the time being, I guess it somewhat works for our purposes, where we're allowed to travel. So this is the Earth, and basically, there's two seas mentioned in the Quran, right? So if you look closely, you'll notice there's two bodies of water that just stand out, right, from all the others. And that would be the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea. What's very interesting about the Black Sea and the Caspian Sea is that they have opposite properties. Caspian Sea is very salty. Black Sea is very fresh, not as salty. Um, it's kind of strange because if you look up the properties of the Black Sea, you're going to find that there's not a lot of oxygen in that sea. And so you can actually preserve a lot of material down there for a long time. They call it the Sea of the Dead, in a way. Obviously, Caspian is a name change because it used to be called White Sea. So Black Sea, White Sea. Interesting. They tell us that there's been a long history of usage on these two seas. And they didn't always look like that. So on old maps, it just looks totally different than what we see today. The Pontus. There's only one problem, though. This is not what it is. And it would be nice, to see that like everything is a microcosm of the macrocosm, and maybe this is a sign, like a sign within our world that we can explore that is similar to the real one, which is outside of you. So it says here 90% of the deeper Black Sea volume is anoxic water. So that means there's no oxygen the further down you go. There's a lot of interesting things about it. That it's called inhospitable. It's difficult to navigate in the Black Sea. Only reason I'm showing you this is because when you understand like what it actually is, one of the two seas, you'll realize that it cannot be this, because this is not, even this is not profound enough. And we all go through this period of growth because it's hard for us to accept the really powerful truths. They just sound absolutely crazy. Even the shape of the earth. That's something that took a long time to really, get to. So yeah, hey, talk about it as the landing point of Noah's Ark or something like that. Anyway, that was one possibility, right? That was one possibility because obviously it has to be somewhere. And so I imagine Beni Israel, they're going through this narrow passageway, the Caucasus, right? That's where they tell us all the Indo-European cultures came from, the Caucasus. The largest mountain in the world largest mountain in Europe is in Russia, in that region there. And you can even see something along the lines of a kind of barrier of this, in a sense, between the North and South Caucasus. The likes of Sheikh Imran Hussein and many people have said that's where Dhul-Qarnayn built his barrier. I'm going to show you guys that it just doesn't fit. This doesn't fit. The only reason I picked those two seas in the beginning is because they're the only ones that are actually isolated from each other, opposite properties. So Really, if anything, it's just a microcosm of the larger picture, which is the real picture. Then we go to the Mediterranean and the Atlantic. And if you guys look here to Gibraltar, because again, Musa is the one that went there for sure. And funny enough, Gibraltar is mentioned alongside another mount called, get this, Jebel Musa in Morocco. Jebel Tariq is, they say it's named after some conqueror of Andalusia. There's no proof of that. And they say that this mountain is named after Musa bin Nusayr, some general. No, there's no proof of that. It's clear why they named it there, because the Mediterranean meets the Atlantic in a narrow meeting way. Okay. And this is really what meeting of the two seas actually means. They actually have to touch and mix somewhere. But there's a problem. The Mediterranean and the Atlantic are both salty, and the two seas are not both salty. And then, of course, if you look at the world map, my reasoning was, well, where is the other ocean? Because this is all one ocean, technically, right? It's all connected, as you could call it, all the Atlantic Ocean, if you like. So we got a problem now. And the only way you can solve it is to look at all the mentions in the Quran of the two seas. So if we go to seas, we're going to find that Bahrain mentioned 4 times. So in the first verse, it says, this is Musa's story, right? And mind you, there's a context to each verse, but at the very least, you can get information in and of itself from the ayah. He says to his servant boy, I will not cease until I reach the junction of the two seas. Majma'. So, like Jama'a is like when people come together, they assemble and congregate. That's what it is, but this is for two seas. And really, I mean, if Allah mentions something with a definite article, you can imagine that's something really important, right? It is he who has maraja. Maraja, the two seas. Almost sounds like merge in English. One fresh and sweet, one salty and bitter. Well, it's kind of interesting because when you look at the words that they use for the first one, and I imagine that this is a sea that we've never seen, because all the seas we're familiar with are salty. Okay. So Azbun is related to something with punishment. Okay. Sure, maybe you can find somewhere it means fresh or whatever. But clearly, how I was saying the Black Sea is hostile. There's something profound about it. This is something crazy, Furatun is mentioned as sweet. And funny enough that this is the word in Arabic used for the Euphrates River. You'll find that rivers in mythology and seas, it comes a bit murky because we can't make up our mind whether something's a river or a sea. That's how big they are. And obviously, we're not aware of any seas that are fresh water. I mean, can you think of any ocean in the world where it's not salty? That's what he's saying here. If you take it at face value, one of them has opposite properties. So the one we're familiar with is salty. Milh. Milhun, right? This is from the word for salt. Ujajun. This is from the word related to Ya'juj, Ma'juj. Ignition, conductivity. Fire and electricity in the Quran are very related. So I imagine that, of course, if something is salty, it acts as a salt bridge and you can actually get power from it. Anyway, the salient point is he's made between them, both of them, a barzakh and a hijran, mahjuran. So there's two aspects to barzakh and hijr. When you look at barzakh, I think I mentioned this yesterday. Barzakh means a barrier, hindrance, separation, but it literally means isthmus. We use this term in geography for any tract of land, a long stretch of land that you can walk on in between two bodies of water. Usually, we only see these things between, like, one sea, right? But what if there was one sea on one side of it and another sea on the other side? So it's basically a land bridge. It comes from the Greek word neck, like it joins the head to the body. So imagine if you're walking upon this, okay, and the interesting thing is we understand from the Quran every one of the directions, north, south, east, west, are absolute. I'm going to show you in the slides in a moment. So what we see in the Quran is mentioned that east and west are incredibly important wherever the sun goes. Let me just show you. Let me see if I can find you a. Here we go. This is a very interesting verse. So basically, we're going to be talking about jinn eventually, but I have to preface the whole idea with a whole context to how this thing works. So this is on the Day of Judgment. And these are the people they're talking to, their qarins. Okay, so they're mentioning on the day of resurrection. When it comes to us, he says, so when he approaches the Lord and the angels that day, he says, Ya layta bayni wa baynaka bu'da al-mashriqain. I wish between me and you the distance of the east and the west. No. The two easts. So mashriq is related to the place of sunrise. It basically means east. And mashriqain is two easts. How is that possible? How can we have two of these things? They have no explanation. Let me just get. I'll be right back, guys. I have to get something in. All right, guys. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So, why is there mention of the greatest distance you can have, according to people on the Day of Judgment, the distance between the two easts? Well, let's show you why. So we don't have a concept of two easts on our map. I'll show you the various maps. So Mercator projection, it's north, south, east, west, and because they've wrapped that on a globe, they don't end anywhere. There is no distance anywhere. So if you look at, like if you look at a globe, right? Let's say you want to pray to Mecca, you can literally face in any direction and you will be praying to yourself. You can't even pray in a straight line. North and south, once you get north, you can continue on and come right all the way back. East, west, same thing. So there's just no way you can salvage that. And that's what they did, is they just wrapped it around. They always knew it was this projection. So let me show you this projection. So very commonly, they still use this, like it is useful for navigation. So this one here actually, it still works. They just have Antarctica around the whole thing. And you see this one all the time in these circles. Well, you've solved the problem of north and south, but east and west, they just continue on and on and on and on and on. Where are the two easts here? They don't exist. There's a problem with that needs reconciling. And from what I understand, this is just a stomped version of the globe. They just kind of squashed it down on the North Pole. Again, you don't have two seas here. And there's another, the Mercator one that I mentioned as well. So let me see if I can find another here. Okay. This is a world map you've probably never seen before. And if you have, then this is an interesting idea that, let me see if I can find it. We have Australia and South America on opposite sides, okay? And then as you get closer, you have Africa toward the south, North America and Eurasia against each other. So you just flip that. Let me just show you. Dymaxion. That's the word I was looking for. I know it's somewhere. Here we go. So this person on Reddit, they made a version of this, and this is very interesting. So as you can see, the Pacific is on one side, and the Atlantic is on the other, with the Indian Ocean and everything else. So this map, obviously, you don't have Antarctica there. There's still some issues, I would say, maybe with the sizing of the Northern Hemisphere continents, because the Northern Hemisphere, the continents are actually smaller than what they show you, and they're what they measure. So what you see here is, imagine if you went to Patagonia, South America, or Australia. Notice how it's practically in line with the Arctic. So the question is, when they tell you they go to Antarctica, are they even going to the south? Because clearly you can see there's something going on here. There's like a western line and an eastern line. And I would suggest that this circle is just a snapshot of a larger picture, right? Of a larger pond. And let me just show you what I mean. So I've talked about this symbol before. This symbol is in the Quran numerous times. Sometimes it's a little bit stylistically different, but it's the same idea as some kind of an octagram or star. Usually they have a dot in the center, and I've just kind of reformatted it to show you what the world is like. There's a pond in a circular shape, and alongside the diameter is this barzakh, this stretch of land, and it's also a hedge because it prevents access to just about everyone unless Allah gives permission. We would be on the southern side, and so then the northern side, you know the company, the North Face? This is the North Face, the real North Face. That's where the jinn are. That's also something to do with people's souls as well. But basically, in this presentation, it's not completed, obviously. The directions are so important to understand because they're related to the hereafter. So when Allah says Ashab al-Yamin, Yamin actually functions like south in the Quran. Like the right-hand side, that's the south of your body. The left-hand side, that's the north of your body. East is your front, between your hands, right? Bayn al-Yaday. And west is succeeding you, in khalfihim, behind you. So we're structured the same way as the earth. And interestingly enough, when you're on a boat, okay, because al-maymana, if you look up this word in the dictionary, what you'll find is it's nautical terminology. The starboard. What is the starboard? The starboard is on the right-hand side of the boat. They even designate them with green and red colors, exactly like Jannah and Jahannam, because this is just subconscious. People have known this for a long time, whether they know what it means or not. We have on Ashab al-Yamin, those are the inheritors of paradise. Ashab al-Shimal, those are the people of hellfire, jinn and men. They're just not here yet. You see, the hereafter is it's pending. So, you know, I kind of go over every single direction, you know, like what their patterns are and how they're mentioned in the Quran. Like, for instance, Al-Mashriqain, I already mentioned. That's the long distance. But why is it the two easts? Well, basically, I'm going to show you guys the north, the west. Okay. They show you this format of 8 as part of the world all over the place, you know, directions, right? All over the place. And especially in Islamic culture. All right. Let me see if I can find. Here we go. So you guys can see this circle here, right? Al-Hijr. So this is related to so many words, but basically imagine you have like a great wall, okay, between the seas. And you have to, because they only mix. I didn't put it here, but they only mix in the middle. That's the only place they can mix. Um, you guys probably understand why, because that's where Mecca is. Okay, Mecca is related to a word called shatr. Shatr. So I've mentioned that in, I think, the first part of the Mecca series. And shatr is basically, it just means a bisector of a circle. That's why Mecca, it has to be there. It means the diameter of a circle. It's along that diameter, in the very center of it, where the two seas meet. And yeah, basically what you see here is the sun and the moon are going around this, okay? And it works exactly like you would imagine on the azimuthal equidistant projection. But basically, we're told in the Quran of 3 stories. Okay, I'm going to show them to you. And you're going to tell me, I mean, what is this even about? Where did this happen? So the reason why is the sun, we know sun rises in the east, sets in the west. But we never actually see the rising place of the sun. We never see the setting place of the sun. Mashriq and Maghrib. It just passes over us over a 24-hour cycle. But where does it go? Dhul-Qarnayn, he saw where it went. Sulaiman saw where it went. Ibrahim saw where it went. I think those are the main stories. It goes into behind a certain veil. It's like a hijab between the worlds. And this veil is how the sun rises and sets, because setting, ghurub, is not really setting. It's just kind of going into a disappearing into something, into darkness or something. The other side, we see it's not really rising, it's just emerging. Tola, to emerge like fruit from a tree. So basically, this hijr is what Thamud are talked about as Ashab al-Hijr. They call it the rocky tract, the stone land. It's the name of chapter 15 of the Quran, al-Hijr. This is related to hijara, which means stones. It's related to hujarat, which are chambers. And as you probably might have noticed, our world is shaped analogous to the heart, okay, which has chambers. It has left and right, so north and south corners. And there's a wall or partition, a septum in between them. You can even use the word septum for barzakh. It still works. Basically, when the sun sets for us, okay, it passes away from our world in the west, the farthest west. It rises for the jinn. But it doesn't rise in the same way, because they don't need the sun. They already have their own light in that world. And that's what we call the moon. The moon is a very faint, cold, weak light. It's not a flashing, lantern that we see, as the sun. The sun is just, you can't even stare at it. But what happens is, Ibrahim, so basically what you see is you have 2 easts, right? One east, one rising place for us, one rising place for the jinn. One setting place for us, one setting place for the jinn. For us, the sun rises in the east and sets in the west. For them, the sun rises in the west and sets in the east. So when we go to the story of Ibrahim. Actually, I may as well go to the thing. This is a big giveaway that there's something to do with jinns, the jinn world, the jinn idea. Because in this story, where Ibrahim sees the wandering star, he sees the moon, he sees the sun. It says, فَلَمَّا جَنَّ عَلَيْهِ اللَّيْلِ. So covered him. Jannah. This is the only time this is used. This is not the garden. This is a verb when something is concealed, because the jinn are concealed by nature. So when Jannah upon Ibrahim the layl. What is this layl? Like, is this really the night you see every time? Or is this a night that enshrouds an entire realm? Like, for instance, in our world, normally we see the sun as our day-to-day activities, right? The daylight, an-nahar. But for the jinn, their world is so opposite. They're like the opposite world. So for them, it's al-layl. They're shrouded in some kind of a twilight, or it's different. Everything is different. The colors are different. The time is different. Space is different. So he was shown a kawkab, a wandering star. He said, "This is my Lord." But when it afala, he said, "I do not like those that of the afalin." This setting doesn't make sense on a globe. And really, when you look at this word, it doesn't even mean setting. It's all in this story every time it's used, because this story proves there is some kind of a limit. There's some kind of a limit where things flip. And he was at this place, right? Because Allah tells him, "We showed Ibrahim malakut as-samawati wal-ardi." I talk about this in part 3 of the Mecca series. This is something that Islamic scholars understood very well as the imaginal realm. I'm going to show you malakut, an invisible realm, the world of the kingdom of God, where you can experience all types of lives, all types of walks of life, from spirits to humans to mythical creatures, whatever. It's amazing. But look what happens in Ibrahim's story. And where did I put it now? Is it here? Yep. So basically, no, this is not the one. Here we go. So basically what happens is these things are being eclipsed. Afala is like reduction in energy, reduction in brightness, something being eclipsed by another. Like in the solar eclipse this year, you have the moon, and you can argue what it is, but something gets in the middle of the sun, or the sun goes behind something, depending where you are on the earth to see it. And you can look directly at the sun in broad daylight. You can see the stars during the daytime, because something gets the sun gets behind something. This is analogous to what happens here, except on this side, the entire sun just wanes. And that happens to the star, that happens to the moon, that happens to the sun. The sun is the most important celestial body for our mode of life. Without the sun, nothing would survive in our world. For the jinn, that would be the moon. I know it doesn't seem like it. The moon seems like this rocky thing out there. Just, we have no idea what it is, mysterious kind of thing. But for the jinn, this is their, like, this is what keeps them alive. So basically, baziren, interestingly, that this is used for only the moon. I don't know what this means, but it has to be significant, right? Anything that's used in specific cases in the Quran is the best word for the story. So finally, he sees the sun. He says, "This is greater," and then it wanes in energy, or doesn't necessarily wane, but basically there's a change in its power. And this is the key for him, that these things cannot be worshipped. It's not that they're just created, they're magnificent creations. And obviously, we should understand that, you know, obviously the sun is not God, for sure. But Ibrahim saw conclusive proof of that because he saw these things change. So, this is a major thing. I'm going to show you another one. So Suleiman, he has a story, and it's a very strangely translated story, like as if he just found some horses gifted to him, and he forgot the. They tell you in Hadith, the meaning is he forgot the Asr prayer, and so he cut off the heads of all the horses. Absolutely ridiculous. So I can't even tell you what this is about. This is something you really have to research, but basically there's some mention of a veil. Okay, what they translate as "until they were hidden in the veil." What is this veil? It's almost like the sun enters something, because if you look how they translate it here, they say, Suleiman, he said, indeed I gave preference to the love of good over the remembrance of my Lord until the sun disappeared into the curtain. Have we ever seen this curtain? What is this? This is something significant. It functions like al-hijab. You're going to notice whenever you see al in front of a noun in the Quran, it's like one of a kind. And then there, obviously, the Dhul Qarnayn example. So Dhul Qarnayn was given a means over everything, and he reached the rising place of the sun. And then before that, he reached the setting place of the sun, and he found it setting in a spring hami'atin. This has to be explained, guys. There's no way you can just do the thing what the Sunnis do and say, "Oh, it looked like to him that he was." No. God doesn't speak in illusions. God speaks from his perspective, not from human perspective. He will use words that will help us understand, what it is. But really, if you think about it, it makes no sense that this is just an illusion. He just sees it go over the horizon or something. He literally goes in a spring. So once you understand that, you can see that where Hijr is mentioned is with the realm of Thamud. The companions of the Hijr denied the messengers, and they were carving from the mountains. So there's mountains along that whole thing, and Allah says they're like red and white, and there's black ones as well. Kind of like those candy canes, stripes of red and white, And while I'm talking about that, I mean, did you guys ever see this? They don't even hide stuff anymore. They've always put it in plain sight. Clearly, this is just a rudimentary example of what Allah talks about, streaks of red and white. You just have to search the color red, It's only used one time in the Quran. And funny enough, it's for these mountains. Various colors, and the mountains have tracts of white and red. Kind of like this. They just call them candy cane mountains, right? Why did they call them that? Isn't that something associated with the North? The North Pole? Okay. This would be in the northern regions. So really, I mean, you're talking about people going to Antarctica from Australia and South America, basically. Sometimes South Africa. South Africa, it's just not clear what direction they take. Okay. Perhaps they land up closer to here where things are more icy. That still remains to be understood, exactly the placement and proportions of the continents, and even the hidden ones we don't see. But this is a long track, because Antarctica just means next to the Arctic. It's not on the opposite side of the world. So, yeah, it's mentioned with the Fajr, Surah al-Fajr, by the dawn, and 10 nights, and the even and the odd, and the night when it passes. Is there a portion of 4:1 of Hijr? They totally don't even care about translating this. This is related to, has to be the same word, Hijr. It doesn't mean perception. It's this place. A day they will be shown the angels. No glad tidings that day for the criminals, and they say an embankment placed under guardianship. That's what that is. Hijran mahjuran. Between both of the two seas is a barzakh and a rampart, hijr, placed under guardianship. You can use whatever words you want. The lap of the world, something that's forbidden. The rampart, this is what I have here. This is a rampart or a palisade, like a great wall or an embankment, something piled up. You can't go over it, around it. Barzakh is mentioned a few times. So it says behind them is an isthmus toward the day they are revived. Really, it's like sent forth, but this is from months earlier. I have to update it. He is the one who freely flowed the two seas. Between both of them is an isthmus and a hijr. So that's how you know the barzakh and hijr are like a handiyadis. They go hand in hand. Allah and His Messenger, a barzakh and a hijr. He who made the earth stationary and made her innermost parts rivers and made for her anchors and made between the two seas an isthmus. Is there a deity with Allah? Nay, most of them do not know. So this isthmus, this barzakh, which functions like a hijr, the seas do not transgress ever. The meeting point is an exception to that rule because that place has to function very differently. Anyway, so west will be right here. East would be right here. North would be right here. South would be right there. And the North Pole to us will be the exact center of everything. Doesn't that fit in a way? And you would say, okay, well, wait a second. How does the sun set and then we see it automatically on the other side? This is a great question. This place in the north face, it doesn't have the same concept of time. It just doesn't. That's why the jinn live so long. That's why everything is different there. That's why the barzakh is this like what do you call it? Purgatory kind of place where you can remain there until the day of judgment. I'm going to show you the story of Yunus. You're going to be very surprised. This is where Yunus went. I may as well just bring it up briefly. Yeah, I think it's this one. So indeed, Yunus was surely of the Mursaleen when he ran away toward the Fulk, al-Mashhoon. There's a big problem here. This is what Noah was carried on. So I don't know, is Yunus Noah's son? Is this ark that Noah was carried on? Did this just carry Beni Israel throughout the generations from devastation? That remains to be explained, but clearly nobody cares to admit that this vessel, whatever it is, carried Yunus. He ran away towards this. It still existed at his time, right? So, not sure what the translation is here, but they take liberties, obviously. So then he enters this creature called Al-Hut. And maybe I can explain what that is. Because, hey, then, this is a long explanation. It's like I just kind of found, just run with the whole thing. Basically, Al-Hut is the name of Pisces in Arabic. Let me find it for you. Pisces, they tell you, is the 12th sign in astrology. I think because it comes right before Aries, which is the first one. Notice there's two fish. And in the Quran, you have Hitan. They're fish. They're whales. If you go to Arabic for this, they call it Burj al-Hut, which means the constellation or tower of Pisces, the Hut, the whales, the whale. So Jonah is a very important person in the Quran. And this is the whole story that, like he enters this creature. This is a big, big creature. Okay. So what's very interesting is if you go to what this used to be called in the Bible, you get this. Tannin. Tannin is a Hebrew word that is used in Arabic today to mean dragon. Literally. Okay, you type in that in Google Translate, it spits out dragon. And basically, Tannin is a sea monster, the biggest possible sea monster you can see. What's funny, though, is the new Bibles, they translate that as great whales. But in the King James Version, it's the dragons, sea dragons. God in the Bible specifically singles them out as creatures created on the fifth day. They are part of the creation. They have a huge function. They're massive, massive creatures. And the mythologies all have examples of this. So like you have what's called the Midgard serpent. Okay. Jormungandr. Massive, massive creature. It's a snake in the ocean. It encircles the earth, biting its tail. That's where you get Ouroboros from, and so on and so forth. Okay, but there's at least two of them. And if you read the Bible, they call it Leviathan and Rahab. So, yeah, they use it for crocodile now because obviously it's aquatic. Interesting idea, right? It was just in the Quran, no problem. You just have to like do a little bit of digging. It says, if he was not one of those who glorify God, musabbihin, he would have remained in its belly toward the day they are resurrected. This is obviously the day of judgment. I mean, something of that nature. People are just sent They're dispatched to the end of time and space. How on earth would this man, this prophet, remain in the belly of this creature, which we just say is a regular whale, until or toward a day they are raised? Unless this creature is something really special. And obviously, if it's traveling up to here, where time is different, yeah, he could actually stay there for years and years and years. So that's something interesting. Yeah. So I'll continue the story of Yunus. Yeah, let me just see if I can. So basically, there is some kind of like a container, Ahqaf, the sound Qaf, the mountains of Qaf. These are just massive mountains. They just hold all the water, all the land masses, and everything. And interestingly enough, we see that Rubu' Khali, this desert in Oman and Yemen, this is where they think the Ahqaf are. I kid you not. Please try to find any reason why Al-Ahqaf means wind-carved, crooked sandhills, dunes. There is no reason. Has nothing to do with that. They imported that definition. It doesn't mean anything to do. So the chapter 46, Al-Ahqaf, right before Surah Muhammad, he talks about nations of jinn and humans, the dwellings of Ad, that civilization. Do you really think that they lived here in Rubu' al-Khali? And obviously the destruction of the cities surrounding you. So that's a big giveaway that Ahqaf has something to do with the surrounding portion. Kaf, like Kahf, the letter Kaf is something contained. Qaf is the container. That's why they sound similar. Early Islamic scholars, they would put these mountains around the land masses of the world. The mountains hold everything together. I didn't even get into what's beyond that ring, but already you can tell it's this Quran is something very special, right? So Ad are told to be somewhere near these areas, right? And like I mentioned, it's interesting because Thamud are in the opposite. They're in this area. So you have Ad and you have Thamud. And when you think about it, it makes sense given that if you just look at the word Ad, right? Just look at what that root means. Repetition. Returning. Repetition. From the Oud. Okay, this is where the word Eid comes from. The holiday, Eid al-Adha. Then you have Eid al-Fitr, right? Something that returns, repeats again. A festival, an Eid. Place of return, place of repetition. Numbers are called adad, right? Similar sounds in that word as well. And it just keeps repeating around itself. So when you look at the empty quarter, it really is the empty quarter. But it's not this empty quarter, okay? This is what they tell you is the place of Ad. What's funny is that they call it the quarter, okay? I don't know why they call it that, but clearly they understand the world is organized into quarters, very much like the chambers of the heart. And the area surrounding them would be Ad. In Arabic literature, Qaf was the loftiest of the mountain ranges created by Allah to support the earth and was the parent of all other earthly mountains. to which it was linked by subterranean ranges. The range is separated from the world of men by the oceans that surround the known world. So if you want to talk about an ice wall or a wall of mountains, that's directly referenced in the Quran. It's a chapter called Qaf. There's just Qaf. And then the word in chapter 46 is Al-Ahqaf. So I wanted to understand, what does that actually mean? That there's nothing to suggest it means wind-carved sandhills. Well, you go to the most, probably the most prolific repository of Arabic words. It's called Al-Ma'ani. And what it means is the hind quarters. The animal's back or buttock, something that's elongated, crooked, like curved around, right? Not straight. This part is straight, perfectly, like a straight path, a straight road, okay? But this part is the end of something. Wow, it's amazing. The earth is actually described like a person. Like it has its own identity, its own anatomy as well. And the holographic kind of fractal nature of it is that earth and heart are anagrams. You just rearrange the letters: heart, earth, hearth. And what do you know? Surprise, surprise. The astronomical symbol for the earth is this symbol. It's a plus sign in a circle. Exactly what the Quran references, the hind quarters, okay? In Chinese characters, the earth also has a plus sign on a flat plane. What are the odds of that? So clearly there's something going on in our world that we don't understand, okay? Yeah. Let me just check the chat, guys. I've been going on crazy, right? All right. Peace, justice, compassion. Welcome to the stream. So, as you can imagine, the shape of the earth is a very controversial topic, but yeah, you can see that it has to fit the narrative the Quran is giving. And the Quran describes all the directions as endpoints. And what's so amazing, peace, justice, compassion, is that there's only one model that fits all of them. And this model encompasses all the theories. There is a sphere of the heavens that is spherical in nature. There is a plane of the earth. And because we are inside the heavens, there's also another earth as well. I didn't even get to that. That's not accessible for us. You find yourself inside these concave kind of dome things. So they just, even the underworld, right? That's the hollow part of the earth, the hollow earth. You can use this model to explain all the other ones that they have created, okay? It's very complicated to give it a shape. I don't know what shape it is. It's just whatever it's like, the image of the elephants, right? This is the shape of the earth, okay? There's a story of blind men, and every part of the elephant they touch, they think, oh, it's flat. Oh, it's a globe. Oh, it's hollow. Oh, it's a concave shape. What if it's all of the above? And we're just picking pieces and choosing pieces of it. It's just something, to think about. Salam alaikum, Dale Cranton. Welcome to the stream. Salam alaikum, Kenneth Blaine. Salam alaikum, Level Earth. Antarctica, Arctic might have fresh water from melting of the polar ice caps. We've never seen the continent of Antarctica. We haven't. There is no picture or photo of it. We don't know what that is wherever they're going. And you can't even go far enough to explore it. You're not allowed to. It's called the Antarctic Treaty. It expires in 2045. So yeah, good luck trying to do that. You have to know people to do that. Australia sees the aurora too. They call it Aurora Australis. Yeah, because it's like in the same longitude, in essence, in a way. Why do you say those in 20s and 30s now are the Akhirin? It's like the mainstream mullahs say, hey, Mehdi's about to come. How do you confirm we are the Akhirin? Indiana Genesis. Well, Allah tells you in the Quran. The Akhirin are already here. Let me see if I can show you. So you saw the Barzakh verses. You can watch that. In chapter 44, we get an interesting story. And basically, Pharaoh is sent a noble messenger, and he wants the Pharaoh at the time to, send the servants of God with this messenger. By the way, Musa's name is not mentioned whatsoever in this story. We assume it's Musa. If you watch the live stream from yesterday, I have doubts regarding that it's him. Because yes, we do see Musa go to Pharaoh, but the language used in this story says there's something else going on. So basically the messenger takes them, they escape, they are right. There's something it's hard to explain. Maybe Mecca Part 6 will kind of explain this better detail. But these people are drowned, the army is drowned, and basically what happens is, who inherits it? Who inherits the realm? The Akhirin. We made to inherit qawman akhirin. This doesn't mean another. Al-akhirin. Let me find it 1 sec. This is the akhirah, okay, the hereafter. So obviously the akhirin are the closest people to the hereafter. Doesn't that make sense? Al-akhiri, the last. You can see why it's the hereafter and the last is connected. Akhirah, akhiri. And then you have akhirin. How many generations we destroyed them? And after them, we brought forth qarnan akhirin. How many a city which was unjust have we shattered and produced after it? Akhirin. The context of the Quran is this comes down as the last revelation to the last people. There's just, I'm not on board with the Mahdi and the Dajjal and all this stuff. But think about it. The Khatam an-Nabiyyin was tasked with spreading this message. If you think that happened 1400 years ago and we have no connection to that whatsoever, nothing in the Quran has anything to do with our, world and everything, that's a waste. That's a waste of time. We would be literally just lost. We just live and die and there's nothing. No, They're hiding the fact that this happened very recently. This flood happened very recently. These cultures continuously build back, like Qawm Lut, Qawm Fir'aun. Are those just stuck in history? Of course not. It's it's not just it's not just history. It's about the end times. Okay. I have to make a video on that too. I mean, somewhere in the Mecca series you can see, you know. Please explain about mashariq, more than 3 easts. Well, basically, mashriqain is plural, right? Maybe mashariq is beyond what we can see, right? Because we're just kind of the central pond. Maybe we have other things, rings outside of that as well. I'm playing around with that idea. I can't really see exactly why that's this mentioned, but basically, I think that those are the samawat, the representation of the samawat on Earth, on the Earth. And the Earth is much larger than our little pond, right? Yeah, so if you're talking about the Earth, then that's a plane. It's pretty obvious, right? It can't work if it's not a plane. You cannot have directions if you don't have a table. You cannot have a compass if it's not balanced on a table. You cannot have a clock if the clock is not circular, like, you know, two-dimensional. That's what the heavens and the earth function as, a clock, a compass. Okay. Yeah, it's a major deception, Level Earth. Really, really big deception. Isa describing bringing back the dead, 349, and bring life to the dead by Allah's will. Allah describing Isa bringing back the dead, 510, how you brought tukhraja, literally exiting one world to the dead by my will. Isa does not see the full picture like Allah does. That is, the soul is literally leaving one side and going to another side to be brought back to life. Yeah, this is a very interesting concept, right? I'm glad you brought that comment up, because to Isa, he's thinking that the soul of the person, the spirit of the person, is just like coming back, animating the body. Like it just doesn't transport, right? But God, Allah, He knows, He sees the process. He says tukhrij, whereas Isa says ahya. So Isa, he thinks, Jesus, he thinks that the life is coming back in the person's body. Allah says no. It's actually coming. It's ruh. That's why ruh means like moving, right? There's a tukhrij, a movement coming forth. That's amazing. So to build on that concept, Kenneth Blaine, there is actually a concept of this in the Quran, that sleep is like death. And this word means dreams. Manan. They're the place of sleep. Think about it. Naum is sleep. Manam. Remember when you put manam, ma, in front of something, it's like a place. So what does Allah say? What does Allah say? Right here. وَمِنْ آيَاتِهِ مَنَامُكُمْ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. That's one of his signs, okay? It's not sleep, it's dreams. Dreams by what? Day and night? More like night, and the day. I mean, it's kind of weird to think about it this way, but we have to take the word very seriously, right? Okay. Allah takes the souls, al-anfusa, hina mautiha. A lot to unpack there, but basically when someone dies, something is removed from them. وَالَّتِي لَمْ تَمُتْ فِي مَنَامِهَا. So those that do not die during their dream. That means when you sleep, your soul is somewhere else. That's literally what it's saying. I mean, broadly, right? Then he keeps those for which he has decreed death and releases the others for a specified term. Indeed, in that are signs for people who give thought. يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. What if this barzakh is visited all the time when you sleep? That's why you feel like the time works differently. The dream world is more compressed. Like you can have a dream that feels like 5 hours, but it's just 30-minute nap. There has to be something to this, right? There has to be a reason for it. And obviously the jinn understand more about this than us. How do the seasons work according to this? Very simple. It's the same way it works in all the other plane maps. The sun just makes a larger or smaller circle. So the smaller the circle of its circumnavigation around the realms, then you have summer in the North Hemisphere, the northern continents, right? Once it goes back, yeah. So Kenneth Blaine, thank you so much. Close to the center, North Pole, colder. Closer to edges of diameter, warmer, like Australia. Yeah. So the sun determines that, and because of that, you have a certain climate. The infamous sea beast, Loch Ness, Game of Thrones has dragons on the wall. Yeah. Yeah, I like that, Kenneth Blaine. The heart itself, in us, in the center of everything, it's like our core, right? The word for heart in Italian is cora. In Spanish, it's corazón, the zone of the internal part. Yeah. Can you explain sunrise and sunset in Norway with this model? Also, you can see 2 sunsets if you climb. Yes, Indiana, you're correct. You can see 2 sunsets, but that is not 2 sunsets because what you're seeing is the limit of your observation. The sun is over something, but Allah is saying that at a certain point, it literally does, no matter how good your vision is, no matter what the conditions of the atmosphere is, you will never see it. It goes behind the veil. So let's say you follow the sun all the way. You'll never be able to do that because let me show you something interesting. This place is a tiny little island. These are tiny islands. And it's where kind of Russia and the US, you can see Russia, I guess, from this thing. But it's not really Russia. I mean, it's just an island. It just happens to have Russian military on it. There are some people that live like on the American side, right? And during the Cold War, it's been this kind of stalemate ever since. Nobody's allowed to go on either side. If anyone decides to cross the ice for a couple miles and go to the Russian side, they will send dogs on them and they will shoot them. Why? They're just Eskimos. They're just regular people, living up there in the colder climate. There is a militarized zone in many regions of the earth that prevent access to whatever is out there. So there's some doubts what this is, like why do they have these zones like that? In Antarctica, it's the same way. You just can't go there. There's a treaty. Arctic is the same problem. If you're a pilot and you fly a plane towards the Arctic, they will shoot you down. They will warn you, and if you don't listen, they will shoot you down. So yeah, like an ostrich nest. Who was Adam the successor to? Was it the jinns? The angels already knew from a previous experience of those who caused corruption on earth and shed blood. It could very well be the jinns. Clearly, they're older than us, right? Are they the only ones, though? Maybe not. Maybe there are other humans before Adam. I'm still debating that, right? I still don't know. Like, is Adam the first man or the first species of his kind that is also a human? Because we have al-insan in the Quran, that's the human species, right? Which there are probably many of them. Like, there could be small people, they call them ants. There could be large people, very tall people called Jabar, giants. There could be people like us. We are just, average 5-6 feet. Apparently, our ancestors were taller. That's so funny because they tell us our ancestors were shorter. They tell us our ancestors were shorter, dumber. They were more backwards, impoverished, and they lived shorter lives, and they didn't have modern medicine. They were less healthy. It's actually the opposite. Our ancestors were more advanced. That's why they continuously worship ancestors, even to this day. You'll find any person that's a nationalist, they literally worship their ancestors. They think that they are continuing some legacy their ancestors did and created everything. Whatever history they gave you to make shirk of your ancestors. This happens to this day. But they were more advanced than us, clearly, more sophisticated. They plowed the earth and built it up more than us. They had greater striking power, whatever that means. They had longer lives, longer lifespans. They had bigger civilizations. They had better technology, better understanding of the world. You just have to look at, all the cosmologies agreed on the same premise. They understood the world better than us. They were more in tune with nature. They're more. That doesn't make them angels. That doesn't make them better people. They just were not as corrupted because the corruption becomes worse with time. That's the pattern. Except for those who believe and do works of righteousness. So, let's see here. Yeah, they say we come from a cave. They say they were all just cavemen. Well, the real cavemen, the companions of the cave, are some of the most remarkable people in history, if not the most amazing people in history. So it's just like a cruel joke of science. Iblis also knew of Judgment Day. Was he made to witness his own successor, Adam? I'm not sure about that, actually. Iblis is a jinn. And you know what? I think it's a good thing to start now because I did want to talk about jinn. It's only been an hour, so maybe we can dedicate the remainder of the stream to the jinns, right? Because I put coral on the thumbnail, so I think it's probably a good idea. Okay. So V, thank you for bringing up the ostrich nest. This is something we don't actually hear much about because You know, our scholars are so lovely. They just don't understand that ostrich egg and ostrich nest are two very different things. The beautiful creature known as the ostrich spreads the earth out where it makes a container exactly like this picture. Okay? Look at this magnificent creature. And she puts her eggs in this place knowing they're never going to roll away. It's stationary, it's not going to rotate anytime soon. And it's a resting place, exactly like the earth is called a resting place. So when you got somebody like Rashad Khalifa, the 19ers messiah, okay? And he tells you it's an ostrich egg. He invented that. Do you really think you know what an egg is shaped like? Does that look like a sphere? It's not a sphere. The Muslims have been given the most ridiculous explanation for their cosmos. And look, you even have depictions of an ostrich nest. Dahaha. Look, it's dawaganda. It is. This person is correct. It's not an ostrich egg. Zakir Naik, the Salafi Dawa. Muhammad Hijab and his sapiens thoughts. The earth is not round like a sphere. It's just not. What we see here is it says the place of laying eggs, the nest. The other religions that pretend like they have the truth, they laugh at Muslims. They laugh at them. The people of the West, they laugh at Muslims because the West was designed to hide things, obscure things. They're very clever. Oblate spheroid. Gotta give me a break. Where is the ablation of the spheroid on this fake picture from the Apollo astronauts? No, there isn't. It's just a perfect sphere. And funny enough, if you guys think there's any doubt to this, right? You type in Earth, that's what you get. Okay. And I guess Africa is so big it just encompasses half the half the surface of the Earth. Okay. Man, Arabia is huge too. Madagascar. Wow. Madagascar is bigger than Greenland, apparently. You flip the other side of that. Do you understand why this is fake? Because all the other continents have to be on the other side. It would be very crowded very quickly. And guys, if there's any doubt who came up with the ostrich egg idea of the globe, you just have to search this thing. This is a Renaissance idea. These people that invented this idea, this lie, are humanists. They're not Muslims, clearly. This was one of the first globes ever made. It was depicted on an ostrich egg. The oldest known globe to depict the New World was engraved on an ostrich egg. Maybe by Da Vinci. This is not a Muslim idea. This is not a Quranic idea. Okay? So, now that's out of the way. Let's talk about some jinns. Okay. Let's see. Jinns. You probably have seen this slide popping in and out. This is something that I made regarding the information back, a few months ago. We did a whole interview with Jerry Marzinsky on Endgame Islam. You guys should check it out. Very interesting interview. Jerry Marzinsky has personal encounters in the world of psychology with these beings, and that's what he concluded after years of field experience. Basically, what we call psychosis and lunacy, and lunacy is actually a very good word for the manifestation of these beings in human bodies. And we can't see them. I mean, they're just not revealing themselves, right? So in Islamic mythology, we have all kinds of different species of these beings. Some of them are referred to as Ifrit, mentioned in Suleiman's story. Some are called Al-Jan, talked about in Surah Rahman. And some are called Al-Jinn. That's kind of the encompassing term. Whether or not these are separate species remains to be understood. But Jinnah is related to possession and madness and lunacy. Funny how that's related to the moon, Luna. And shayateen are kind of the transgressors from them, that they can be both jinn and humans. So the idea that jinn are not anything except a separate species of the created species is funny, because maybe I've talked about this in the past, but yeah, basically what we see. Yeah, I'll talk about that. Okay. We have in Rome, we have in ancient Greece and pre-Islamic Arabia even, the concept of genies, jinni. Let me just find it here. And funny enough, yes, some people have caught on to the fact that this is where we get the word genius from. So quite short-sightedly, people have thought, well, this is just genius. That's just an intelligent person. No, it's not a genius. It's a jinn. And the reason why is because the origin of the term genius comes from spirits. They were spirits people went to for guidance. They made shrines to these spirits. In Greek, they're called daemons. So that's why there was the word demon, and we use the word jinn. It just derived from Arabic ultimately, but if you read this entire article, you'll see that basically they understood in ancient Rome, Roman religion is not that different than what the Quran describes. Yes, they worship their gods and everything. That's where they deviated, but basically a lot of the concepts are the same. Like you have some kind of a companion devil, companion jinn, that just knows everything about you. Is from the moment you're born until you die, you have this thing follow you around and trying to incite you constantly to blaspheme. Ukfar. Okay? So they're separate species of creation, and they're defined by their concealment. That's one of their main traits. And they take advantage of that, right? What you don't see, you don't know anything about. They mimic your thoughts in your voice. So you think that you're having thoughts all the time that might be actually incitements to do wrong. So we see all kinds of artwork of these kind of serpentine type dragons and fiery creatures with like thunder and lightning coming out of their nostrils. And so what I want to say, like the main patterns that you can see is they are made of some kind of a very special type of fire. Let's open up the verses on that, shall we? So the jinn world is pretty amazing. So if you go to this one here, still trying to figure out what's the difference between Jan and Jinn. But clearly they are something, right? Something related to that. Did you guys know that they don't even want to tell you that there is something related to serpents about at least some of these creatures, right? They're very intelligent. And it's in the story of Musa. So when Musa's told, throw down your staff, and then he sees it writhing as if it was a serpent, snake? No. Jan. Jinn. Jan. Why do they put snake in there? They put snake in there because if they tell people Musa, his scepter, his staff became a Jan, something like a Jan, not literally one of them, but like that, they have to explain now that Jan are serpentine. They wriggle around. Okay. And obviously, this is like very big and scary creature for Musa because he turned back in flight. And that's why Allah tells him, do not fear, Musa. Do not fear. If you can't go up against this creature, then you're not ready to face Fir'aun. You need to get over your fear. I mean, do you see like the parallels? Like they have these movies like Dune. Okay, they tell you in Dune there's like this Messiah and he's in the desert and he has these giant worms, these sand worms. Funny that dragons used to be called worms with a Y, not an O. So they tell you in the film, fear is the mind killer. So the Muad'Dib character, he has to get over his fear. And funny enough, he controls these worms and nobody can stop him. So we have Hollywood imitating these archetypal stories. And what are the Jan made from? They don't actually see any difference between Jan and Jinn in the Quran translation, but clearly there is some kind of a distinction. Okay, it's a different sound. And the Jan we created from before, from a fire, as-sammum. They don't attempt to even translate this. I probably sound like a broken record telling you, but guys, this is very serious, right? Because this is the speech of the Creator, and they're just throwing aside any essential information. As-sammum, this word is never translated correctly because what it would imply is this fire is poisonous, venomous, toxic. Okay. This does not mean eye. They just made this word eye because in the Bible it says, a rich man will not enter paradise except through the eye of a needle of the eye of a camel, or camel through the eye of a needle. The people who wrote the Bible translated the Quran. Okay. But this word, sammum, it is very likely a place, I would imagine, in that realm, the fires of Sammum, because it's like you have Sammum, then you have Zaqqum, and you have Arrum. Are you starting to see the pattern? Rhyming words tend to be related. Not in meaning, really, but maybe in geography, maybe in their association, because everything is paired in the Arabic language, in the Quran especially. So perhaps there's a poisonous part of the world for us, and we're told, we see that signs of this in reptiles. They're toxic. The jinns are analogous, some of them at least, to reptiles. A lot of them are analogous to marine life, and you're going to see exactly why. Their world is submerged. There's no land up here. The reason why there's no land is because it's in the northern half of the world. So what's very interesting is the more north you go, you're going to see the continents get smaller. The land gets less fertile, less fruits, less sun, right? And more ice. Ice is water. So the water starts to replace the land as you go more north. That's why Antarctica cannot be just this thing around the earth and it's at the south, the bottom of the globe. No. Much the opposite. The farthest reaches of the north and the sides of the north, that's in the Bible, but it's interesting that they use that terminology, is frozen. And it's frozen for a reason. We don't know how it got that way. We don't know what that is called in the Quran. But I'll tell you what, the Quran is aware of this, because if I show you there's a story in there about two men, and they have a garden. One of the men has a garden, and he was unjust, and he said, I don't think that this will ever perish, and ever. It will last forever, this garden. And the critical thing that he said is, I do not think the hour will occur. So if I'm brought back towards my Lord, I will surely find better than this as a return. So his companion said to him, who was a believer, he said, why do you just believe in the one who created you from dust, from soil? Okay. Then from nutfa, then shaped and fashioned you into a rajulan. He is Allah, my Lord. I do not associate with him anyone, with my Lord. And why not, when you entered your garden, you said, whatever Allah wills, there is no power except with Allah. La quwwata illa billah. And yeah, so basically what happens here? He says, if you see me lesser than you in wealth and children, the believing companion, okay, maybe your Lord, maybe my Lord will give you better than your garden if you believe in him, right? That's the connotation. And he will send upon this garden that you have, which is clearly not forever, a calamity, an account from the heaven, and it will become sa'idan zalaqan. Look at this, guys. Slippery ground. What is slippery ground in our world? Ice. Clearly ice. There's just nothing else I can think of that would be slippery. Zalaqan. So a garden was transformed dramatically into ice. Because if you go down in the story, this is what happens. Or this is an inclusive or, right? It's not M. M would be excluding two options. This is a possibility that's included with it. Or it will become its water sunken. So you will never be able to find it. And are surrounded by its fruit, so he began twisting his hands up over what he had spent on it, and it collapsed upon its urushiha. This is the plural of arsh. This is why arsh has nothing to do with the English word throne in actuality, because there's something about the roof, the trellis, the things that reach the arches above you, that this word actually refers to. Just food for thought. And he says, oh, woe is me, I wish I had not associated with my Lord anyone. This word sa'idan, this does not mean earth. This does not mean earth. It's like a plane. Okay? And so what I think is going on, guys, this is kind of a theory. It's a bit out there. But when you look how this word is used, right? Sa'idan is like a plane of the earth. Okay. It's a level thing, right? They put it as soil. We will make that which is upon it a barren ground. No soil in here. Soil is trab. Sa'idan is just ground. Okay. The ground you walk on, any ground. A barren ground. Oh, so Juruzan. Juruzan is only referenced to a land that's barren. Let's go back. Then the only other times it's used is with tayammum. You guys know tayammum, right? Like if I put tayammum in here, this is a purification with earth, with sand, because the Arabs, they live in a sandy place. One problem though, there's no moisture in sand. You actually don't wash yourself. They just had to put it because the Arabs live in this desert environment now. But what's analogous to a desert? You guys know of a place that's also called a desert? What's the definition of a desert? A place where there's no precipitation. Arctic. Arctic. We call it tundra. The coldest biome. Okay. I'm gonna come back, guys. Just need to take a break. All right. Give me 1 second. All right, guys, we're back. So let's look at where in the world tundras are located. What do you know? The North. They put in there Antarctica because we have no idea what Antarctica is. Antarctica could just be the portion on the other side. They just put it on the south. The North. That's the pattern. The ice was all over Siberia, Scandinavia, Canada. It's just continuously in frost. So when we go back to here, it doesn't say seek clean earth. That word أسعيد, that word صعيدا طيبا. Okay. فأمسحوا, where is it? فتيمموا. فتيمموا, it just happens to be related to yem. Let me show you. This is a theory and process, right? The yam is the body of water. I mean, I assume it's a body of water. I don't know. I mean, it's some kind of a ocean or river or sea. They can't decide what yem is, but the word in Hebrew, right, is yam. This was a deity representing the sea that was worshipped by ancient mythologies. It has to do with sea. And even in Hebrew today, Dead Sea, Al-Bahr al-Mayyit, Al-Bahr Mayt. But in Hebrew, it's Yam Hamalah, salty yam. Sometimes they call this hypersaline lake the Arab Sea. Interesting. Right here, Sea of Araba. Okay. Now, tayammum. We produced you from the earth. Do not aim toward the defective therefrom, from the earth, spending while you would not take it yourself. I don't know what tayammum means, but it's related to this concept of this yam. And Pharaoh was drowned in this yam. Noah's people were drowned in this yam. Musa was tossed into this yam as well. They just put river because to them they have to be in Egypt, right? Like the Bible says, and the Nile River is where he was placed by his sister. Pharaoh pursued them with soldiers, and there covered them from the sea that which covered them. They became drowned. This is also something that Musa tells As-Samiri, the Sumerian, that we're going to put this god in there, in this yam. I don't know what this is, but clearly something happened in our history. This is why a lot of the world looks like it's destroyed. It's like a post-apocalypse. What if tayammamu is... Because remember, sa'idan is used with what? It's used like with a slippery ground. Chapter 18, verse 40. So isn't it interesting that maybe you do tayammum with this surface because there tends to be snow on there. You could wash yourself technically with snow. Wash your hands and your face. It says, if you have found no water. Water is obviously flowing, right? Maybe this became something later as sand because Those places are very dry, but it's analogous to the tundra. Anyway, a bit of a sidetrack. Yeah, so the Quran is aware of these things, right? Where is it? I think it's here. Yeah, so the jinns. Okay. The scorching fire, Sammum. The jinns are made in this substance. And that's the substance is related to hell. It's related to the eternal punishment, that side of things. Maybe I failed to mention that. I think I did briefly mention, but basically, our side of the pond with land will be Jannah. That's the connotation, because Ashab al-Yamin, Ashab al-Maymana, al-Ayman, that's the side that inherits the paradise. Ashab al-Shimal, Ashab al-Mash'ama, right here, they do not inherit. They inherit hell. Okay, it just happens to be given a direction with it as well. Interesting, right? That the Quran actually gives you so much information about this. Okay, so that's why, like you have the red and green symbolism everywhere, traffic lights, everywhere, port and starboard. So everything from the word jinn derives from concealment, something that is hidden from sight, from the senses. To cover, to hide, to conceal, to veil, jinnan. To descend or fall or become dark, which again would make it hard to observe, right? To be or become possessed, insane, to get mad, crazy. The word for embryo or fetus or a germ, which is hidden inside the belly of a woman, is called janeen. It's hidden. A garden, the garden in what we call paradise, is called Jannah. So it's not simply a garden, right? But interestingly enough, gardens conceal the seed, just like the embryo, conceal the seed, and they reveal something from that as a plant. It takes time, but it happens. That's kind of interesting. Majnoon means somebody that's possessed, insane, lunatic, and clearly this phenomenon is related to them. They are made of a special type of fire. They're in a parallel realm to us, right? They're non-humans. They're always contrasted with humans. They have extremely long lifespans. They predate humanity. They have been here for a long time. And it makes sense because everything about them is more or less opposite to us. They still have free will. They still have a tendency to bad or good, but they're just hyper aware. Their abilities to us seem superhuman. That's why people have used them in the past, like Suleiman, to build magnificent cultures. They have species, they have nations. The messengers in the Quran that are from the jinn, they speak as a collective. Ya qawmana. Whereas all the human messengers, they speak as individuals. Ya qawmi. So I imagine that it's very likely the jinn are like a hive mind. They're just connected like we are on the internet right now. But to them, it's normal. It's biological. It's been that way for a long time. There's not a lot of change in their world because their world is very plastic, unlike ours. They have believers and they have deniers of God. Clearly, because Shaitan is the most famous denier of Allah. He's not really a mushrik. He understands that God is Allah, but he kuffers. And this seems to be the pattern with the ones that deny. They want to kind of be gods themselves. And for when they look at us, of course, they see why, right? So that's interesting because, fire is plasma. It's a fourth state of matter. It's conductive. Many examples of plasma, like the aurora borealis, lightning. So interestingly enough, it's related to that. I thought it's interesting to talk about, shaitan and shaitan, what the root words for that is. Shatana means to fasten or tie something, to bind something, distant, astray. Atashtan means to worry or be busy with. Tashtanat means malicious. Shatna, something that is a trouble or bothersome. Shtan means to pester or worry or preoccupy someone's mind. These are all related to the word shaitan. Okay, so you can see why he has this title and why these people and jinns have these titles that work against Allah's cause. The most malicious, ashtan, the most obnoxious, devilish, fiendish, clever, sly. They're not enemies to be trifled with. Allah says he's a clear enemy, so he knows us very well. Our enemy knows us very well. Legion of fiends from the jinn species. This would be called shayateen, right? So their commander is clearly Iblis, the devil. Ash-Shaytan, Iblis. He's got the main title. But then there's also Ash-Shayateen, Shayatini, the underlings. And they have ranks, just like the angels. They're analogous to the angels in many ways. They interfere unlawfully with the affairs of mankind. So like when you watch alien movies like Star Trek, you have this thing like the Prime Directive. The aliens that follow the laws, they're not allowed to interfere with other nations, with other species, other modes of life. That is not followed at all by these jinns. They interfere all the time. In fact, they seem to believe that they have more of a right to interfere with us than we do with them. And so, in a way, they are the enemies of not just humans, but also the believing jinns, because Shaitan says, I will attack them by their north, their south, east, west, basically all directions. That would encompass all the different, the jinns in chapter 72, they're not really bothered by him that much, but they consider Shaitan, Iblis, to be foolish. The benevolent jinns. So they're like aliens. In a sense, all the media about aliens is talking about these beings. They possess humans to do their bidding. They actively seek to corrupt the dunya, the temporal world. They're served by those who invoke other than God. So the people that worship jinns are polytheists. That's what the connotation is. When you have these statues and when you have these gods, anything you call upon except Allah in the Quran is a rebellious jinn. And their entire game is trying to maximize the number of humans sent to hell. Maybe even the number of jinns, right? Because if they enlist with Shaitan's army of demons and fiends, then they also get sent to hell as well. So it's like kind of like a tit for tat. They understand that, like, they will never believe that God is supreme. They will never believe in the truth. And so the thing for them is, okay, it's time to bring someone else with me. It's like someone that's drowning. They will always try to pull someone else with them down, right? So these creatures are the same way. It's like they just know they're going there. Like they know they're going to hell. It's not impossible for them to repent and do good works, but most of them do not. And so that's why they aspire to bring as many humans with them to make it comfortable, I guess. Make it seem like a victory in a way. Okay. this is psychotic how these creatures think, these devils, right? And basically they are married. They're described as married or married. These are specifically the ones that try to unseat God's authority by ascending to the heavens. And Islam understands this very well. They ascend into the heavens. They try to grasp some kind of a portent of the future that the angels share, and they only maybe get just a glimpse or a hearing of it before they're pelted and shot down. Where many humans can pass on this knowledge that's inaccurate and make somewhat accurate prophecies of the future. It's called soothsaying. It's not actually like knowledge. Nobody actually has knowledge of the future. It's always in some kind of fragmented form. So qarins are the most commonly interacted with jinn in the world. This is usually defined as an intimate comrade or partner that follows you around in this life. Your demon, your inner demon. And some people that follow the Quran alone will kind of see this idea as, oh, this is from the modern Islam, this is from Sunni Islam and whatever. But if you think about it, that is the test of this life. You, of your own accord, would never come to all of these different associations and these different actions and thoughts and inclinations without something guiding that or misguiding that, pulling the strings of your mind. So all the times that qarin is mentioned, qarin is something like something close or something that is related to the generations of mankind. And in chapter 4 verse 38, he's evil minion of the devil. They're destined to reside in hellfire in chapter 37 verse 55. They attempt to inspire blasphemy, chapter 37, same chapter exactly. This chapter 37 has a lot of references to these beings called jinn. They make certain actions attractive that are bad. They're evil. The believers, however, on the day of judgment, they escape this trap. These things are removed out of them. And all of a sudden, they're like, wow, I don't feel fear anymore. I don't feel like sad or depressed or anxious. Almost like something was there the whole time, hidden. In the Quran, we get an idea that the nafs is something that whispers to mankind, just like these things whisper. Shaitan whispers. They prey on the forgetful of God. So forgetfulness is from the devil. That's something very clear. And the Quran is the antidote. It's the remembrance, the dhikr, and it comes from God, right? Because if you forget God, then your moral system is so malleable. You can be led to believe anything. Like, oh, let's just treat everybody the same. That will solve all the problems. No, it won't. That's not how morality works. Morality has to be objective. And God is the only source of objective morality. So if you forget that, at very least, you can be led down a very dark path. They avert humans from the way, thinking that they are guided. This is what we see in our religions today. We see them because this is so clever, is the best way to trick most of humanity. And Allah allows this because there's no excuse in this life. All the information is there. He sent down the revelation. It's up to people to decide whether they want to follow it or not. But they are very clever because if they make you believe you're doing something good, you will never know that you're being puppeteered until it's too late. They are wretched and they will be scorned by their regretful human host. This is so interesting to me. During the dunya, the people that are very close to this companion devil, they're like friends. They listen to everything it says. Sometimes when it's like very obvious the person has a mental illness, they will actually say it's another voice. And this is what Dr. Jerry Merzinski discovered. So they don't even have to hide that much. They just need to isolate the person further and further and further from all the things that are beautiful and positive and could possibly remind them of God in the end. That includes your family, that includes your loved ones, that includes your security in this life, your job, your wealth. Those things can be like a safety net. And if they remove you from that through drugs, through zina, through gambling, through entertainment and things like that, you end up homeless, you end up sick, you end up dependent and depressed and anxious. They can control you more and more and more and more. So the compliant humans will share in their punishment, number one, because they are not listening to God. They're not using their abilities. They're just following they're following these beings literally, quite literally, on this path that leads to the fire. And what's interesting is on the day they will dispute with these people. The human host that these things possess, it's too late now. The day has come. Now you made your choice. You chose the hellfire. They will actually blame each other. Isn't that amazing? They were never allies ever, actually. Just like the people that are fighting and controlling and policing the world around us, Yahud and Nasara, Kafirun and Mushrikeen, they actually only appear on the surface to be allies because really deep down, their alliances are paper thin. So I find that very interesting. Like, it's not actually a relationship that's healthy. They will be made visible one day when human visual limitations are lifted. Let me show you that verse. So it's 50:22. And you can check all these verses yourself. You can pause the video and find them. Certainly you were in your heedlessness from this. So we removed about you your cover. Ghita'a. It's like a blanket. So your sight, your vision on the day, hadid. That's not sharp. That's iron. I talked about this in the Mecca series. So we will see these things, right? They are aware of their damnation. That's literally the next verse. And will say, qarinuhu, his qarin. This is what is with me ready. What is he talking about? The fire. Next verse, throw it into Jahannam. Every kafarin anidin. Okay. Many people have a problem with hellfire. They say, why is there an eternal damnation, eternal torment, punishment, and all this? I mean, please just think about what happens on this earth right now. And that God is all-knowing. He knows exactly what you would do if you were reincarnated 1 trillion times, which won't happen. But if you were, he would know exactly what you would do every time. It's already calculated. You can't blame God because you don't know your own future. You get to choose what you want to do. You don't feel like you're controlled right now. I'm just talking out of my free choice. Nobody will have an excuse. All the signs are there, and Allah has given you all the mercy you could possibly want if you choose to accept it. They will claim to God that they never forced anything upon their human hosts. They were simply in distant error. Amazing, right? This is what Shaitan talks about all the time. I never forced them. They just chose to listen to me. You really think there will be any excuse when the actual perpetrators of the crime will testify in the courtroom on the day of judgment, and they'll say, I didn't force them. I just said, hey, do this. You know? So yeah, this is from Dr. Zaid Qasim Muhammad al-Ghazawi. May Allah grant him Jannah. He's deceased at the moment. But he made this really amazing connection between the major ills from psychology connected to the commands Shaitan gives for mankind, what he commands mankind to do. So, yeah, you can look it up. Basically, we talked about this on a live stream on Endgame Islam. Religious interference, unwanted perverted thoughts, and possible harm against others are the three things mentioned in the Quran that Shaitan commands for mankind. And this is all caused by intrusive thoughts. Those are not your thoughts. Those are these things. So the evil, as-su', against others. Al-fahisha, the immorality, that's against oneself. And kufr, to speak about God what you do not know, aka blasphemy. That's against God. That's what Shaitan commands for mankind. So evil is a potential or actual ill effect. That's how it's defined. Immorality is associated with impurity, depravity, perversion. And blasphemy, saying about God what you have no knowledge of. That's how it's defined in the Quran. So these are the three manifestations of OCD. Obsessive compulsive disorder. Compulsive because you feel like you need to do it. Obsessive because you continue to do it despite it making no sense. These are whispers. So aggressive thoughts, possible harm against others. This happens. This is documented. Then you have sexual thoughts, that's unwanted, perverted thoughts. And religious thoughts, things that are blasphemous, right? And these are all the references here where this is mentioned. These exact terms. So you can make the connections yourself. Yusuf averted from asu' and al-fahisha. Why? Because the woman, the wife of Aziz, she was trying to have an immoral relationship. Yeah. Those who claim the hellfire is temporary commit kufr. The Sunni Muslims today, even the Jews, I'm not sure about the Christians, but definitely Sunni Muslims and Jews, they commit kufr because they claim the hellfire is temporary. And you can enter there for a temporary punishment and enter Jannah again. That's kufr. So you can see where that idea came from, knowing what Shaitan commands for mankind. Attribution of a god having a child, that is Christianity in a nutshell. That's invented falsehood, kufr. Interesting how the word cover is related to these beings that are always covered, right? Directly related to kufr, as it is contrasted with associating with God that for which he has sent down no authority. Claiming that God commands immorality is an example of blasphemy. So when you see in a lot of religions, oh, this is what God wants. God did this and God created this and made this ill. And no rational person would attribute immoral acts to the creator of the heavens and the earth. But we see this all the time from these beings through mankind. That's what we see. Yeah, we can go about this another time, that there are kind of steps how shaitan gets to you. And I think that'll be a very interesting discussion. But now you can see the paradigm of what is going on. And let's go back to... Okay, I wanted to talk about Zaqum. We have maybe 15 or 30 minutes left of the live stream, I would say. So, Zaqum. We're told this place has to do with hellfire. Rhymes with Samum. And what's interesting is there is a tree of this place, Zaqum. That's how you know it's somewhere, right? Is that a better lodging, or Shajaratu az-Zaqum? Indeed, we have made her a fitna for the Zalimin. Indeed, it is a shajara, will spring in the bottom of al-Jahim. طلعها, its spadix, as if it was ru'usu of the devils. This is very interesting. And it says, indeed, they will eat from it and fill from it the stomachs or the bellies. Then indeed for them upon it is a mixture from hamim. There's another one that's has that moom, meme, qum. There's something there. But this is very interesting. The heads of devils is the best analogy Allah can give. Now this is a metaphor. Why? Because it has kaf in front of there. كَأَنَّهُ رُؤُوسُ الشَّيَاطِينِ. But what's very interesting is that the shayateen are described as heads. No bodies, no arms, no legs, no torso, heads. Maybe you guys have noticed the title of this. And something that we celebrate every year without thinking what it means, why we do it, where it came from, when it happens during the year. This. Have you guys seen these jack-o'-lanterns? It's a fruit. And it's a fruit made into a semblance of a demonic head. It even has a smile, a kind of demonic smile as well. They put in, like cloaks on it or whatever. There's a light in it. It has a fire in it. They're just ethereal beings. That's the likeness of it. We're told there's a story of a person called Jack, and he uses some kind of a turnip or a pumpkin, and then he puts it in a light in it so he can traverse the underworld. And the devil is mentioned in that story. One sec, guys. So this happens on All Hallows Eve, right? And this is a point at which the spirits of the dead the veil is thin between the worlds. The veil is thin. In the pagan celebrations, it's referred to Samhain. First of November. Okay, lots of fire and everything. The darker half of the year. So in Asia, they have just gone full throttle with this. And they put lanterns in this exact shape. Pumpkin. A gourd plant. And they put fire in there. And they literally believe and worship these things to this day in China. In Japan, in Korea, in Thailand, in Vietnam. They light incense, they make a fire, they make shrines. You'll find these shrines everywhere. It's always to a deity, a tutelary jinn. which is why the East tend to be mushrikeen. Even this symbol too has become associated with them. This is just a pattern. That's all it is. Mushriqeen, Easterners. Mushrikeen with a kaf, polytheists, idolaters. So now you can understand why the different rituals of the world exist in the form they do. I mean, even have you guys wondered why this is the most pervasive symbol in that part of the world? The Hut, the Tannin, the sea monster, like a dragon. It's from Yunus' story. And this is also from Yunus' story. And I'm going to show you a connection here. You might find this interesting. So, heads of devils from a tree of Zakum. You got that? Well, guess what? Let's go to Yunus' story. Let me see if I can. Yeah, here it is. So remember, he was in this thing. Okay? He was in this thing. I mean, God knows how long, but he was in its belly. And when you go here, he would have remained there until or toward the day they are sent forth. Then we cast them by the shore. This is not the word for shore. This is, I don't know what this is, but it says he was Saqim. And funny, Ibrahim is Saqim as well. We already talked about how Ibrahim is Jannah upon him, the night. He ventured into this place as well. And what happens is, Yunus, we cause to grow upon him a tree, not a plant, a tree from a pumpkin. It's right there in the Quran. Yaqteen is the word for pumpkin. You don't believe me? There it is. Yaqteen. Yaqteen nabat. Gourd or pumpkin? I'm going to go with pumpkin for obvious reasons. A tree was grown from it? Where have you seen that ever in your life? There's no pumpkin tree. There's no tree from a pumpkin anywhere. But funny enough, it just so happens that we put heads of devils into this fruit. And there is something like this in the story of Jonah in the Bible. Have you ever heard of the story of Jonah in the Bible, of the worm? This is not in our world, guys. This is not in the Middle East, okay? Jonah is next to this tree. Okay? And a worm comes with him. I already mentioned to you guys, the worm is code for a type of a monster. I'll show you what that looks like. Looks like this. Kind of what this is. Sea serpent. Serpent of some kind of a medium, right? Whether it's a sea or fire or it's a dragon. They called them worms back in the day. And funny enough, Jonah in the Bible is with a worm, and he's under a tree of a pumpkin. And the worm was gnawing at that tree. You can see it right here. The worm, the serpentine dragon, was gnawing, eating from that tree. Do you know where that is else? That is in Norse mythology. Nidhogger. The Quran reconciles all of these things that have been divided. This is a giant serpent. Giant serpent. So clearly, Yunus was in a very, very alien world. There's no way around it. You cannot find any tree from a pumpkin anywhere. To Allah, this is nothing. This is just order of the day for him because he knows everything. To us, it's very easy to overlook these details because that's how humans are. So then it says, we sent him toward mi'ati alfin or more. And they believed. So we gave them enjoyment toward a heen. So ask them, does your Lord have daughters? While for them are the sons. It doesn't even mention who Yunus was sent to, except that they believed. They believed, guys. Whereas every other nation from the humans have disbelieved. Every single one, mostly disbelieved. And why does Allah not specify the actual number? I've heard some people say that this means every prophet is sent to a community, people that are at least 100,000. That makes sense. But why did he say or more? That's ambiguous to me. I really feel like this 100,000, the largest number in the Quran, 100,000, constitutes a different type of intelligence that are all connected. It's like you go into a Facebook group and you see, oh, there's 5,000 members. At any point, there could be 5,000 connected laptops or computers or phones. In Yunus's case, the jinns. Why would it be so hard for Beni Israel, who were chosen and preferred upon the worlds, which Yunus would be a part of, Beni Israel, that he would be taken to a place totally different, everything's different. All the prophets seem to have some kind of a knowledge of how vast and miraculous and strange the world is. Why are they the only nation that believed? And please, there is no way that I was a, when I watched Veggie Tales as a kid, they would talk about Nineveh and the story of Jonah, and Nineveh has the word noon. It's based off of noon, that large creature. That's what they say it is. It's the whale that he was in, noon. So it's not this place, guys. And they have to put 100,000 as the population of Nineveh. Nineveh didn't even have like anybody. Old pictures, old photos of this place in Iraq. I mean, it doesn't make sense. He wasn't sent to Kurdish people, guys. He wasn't sent to Kurds or Iraqis or anything like that. He was sent to people that are near this tree. And I say people because that's the word that is used for all species. The jinn are from qawm, just like us. They have nations, communities, races, species, everything, just in a different way. So at any point, these beings are just telepathic. They're just connected at least 100,000 at any given moment. That's why Allah made it a minimum and not an absolute maximum or anything. Because that's the minimum amount, I believe, that this is how they communicate. They're just unconnected like this. That's why they believed. And you know why they believed? Because the jinns, very different than us, they have no concept of shirk. Barely anything. I can't find anything to suggest the jinn would ever even think to make gods. Their entire world is a proof that there's one creator. Entirely. Ours, though, we are so deluded. We're not intelligent like on that level. Imagine if you lived 1,000 years and you saw things like Noah, and you saw that all the things changed, and you were studying for that long, and but these things are so different. Their knowledge seems godlike to us. Okay, and maybe where our strengths are in our emotions, not necessarily our intelligence. If you were to look at the center of the world as a heart, well, they would probably be the brain aspect, the mind. That's what they seem to symbolize. For us, we are always in survival mode. It's like the gut. We're always struggling, not them. And I've listened to a fair amount of extraterrestrial contactees and UFO contactees in my youth. And they all seem to describe something very similar to what the Quran describes. It's just not in outer space, it's in the outer space. Space, just beyond the barzakh. Take it or leave it, it doesn't make a difference. It's just we have to explain these things because this is not God wasting his time with verses. He's telling you right after the story of Yunus, does your Lord have daughters while you have sons? And notice it's al-banat and al-banun. They call the angels daughters. And Allah is clearly associated with the malaika. See, did we create the malaika inathan while they are shahiduna? No. So the banun are clearly the sons of God, the jinns. That's what they have interpolated. This is a jinn idea. It just flows very perfectly with the story that comes after. So I might have mentioned that there's no land up there. Maybe it's ice, but no land. So where do the jinns live? Well, they're associated with this. This is mentioned in Surah Ar-Rahman. I'm going to pull it up. Hope you guys are enjoying the stream, by the way. Always forget the chat in the background. Now look, it says here, which of your favors of your Lord do you both deny? This is talking about the jinns and the humans. Okay. He released the Bahrain. Yaltaqiyan. Meeting. Between them is what? A barzakh. None of them transgress. I already mentioned this verse. So which of your favors of your Lord will you both deny? Yakhruju, from both of them, the pearl and the marjan. So which of your favors will you both deny? This word coral has the word jan in it. Isn't that what we said earlier? That's what a portion, or maybe all of them. Jan is contrasted with ins, insan and jan. So to me, that tells me the marjan is something to do with the jinn ocean. So we have the Atlantic, okay? What's the biggest ocean on the globe? Pacific. By far the biggest. Pacific Ocean is almost half the area of the continents. It's a major gap. And believe me, there are no gaps. There is no space wasted by the Creator. So they had to put this somewhere on the globe, probably to remind themselves of the actual truth of what's going on in our world. So the Atlantic is named after Atlas. Atlas is related to the world. This is our world, Atlas. Atlantic. Atlantis. However, Pacific, what's the definition of Pacific? Peaceful, serene, pacifist, non-violent, no conflict, appeasing, equitable. Okay? It's related to something peaceful. Musalam, salmiya, from salam. The peaceful sea. Do you know where they use this term? Think about it. Peaceful, tranquil, serene. Where do they use these terms in our world to describe an ocean or a sea? Quranic Islam, the jinn are made, they're contrasted with humans. The word insan is contrasted with jinn. Jinn wa ins. They are a completely different creation. Even Iblis is aware of this. He's not speaking just from no knowledge. He says, I'm made of this fire. He's made from mud. He's made from clay. He is aware the difference. Why does Allah not mention any creation story for angels, unlike jinn and insan? That's a very good question, actually. But like Kenneth Blaine said, how are we supposed to understand angels? How? They're not even tested. They're like kind of like nature or something. Like it's beyond, like it's like saying, the earth is a creation, okay? I'm glad you guys like the like the tundra example. Okay. What then? What are we supposed to make of the earth being its own person? You can't even conceptualize that. The stomachs of the earth, we can't even conceptualize it. Angels are the same way. Okay. Peace, justice, compassion. Yam means metaphorical ground. The metaphors in the Quran are wherever there's a kaf in front of it. Ka, this, like this. Those are metaphors. And the metaphors are based on real things. Okay? We cannot make that leap to say it's metaphorical because, like I said, Pharaoh would then be drowned in a metaphorical flood. Noah's people were drowned in a metaphorical flood. A flood of confusion, maybe, like Dr. Hani says. No. I don't see that to be the case. Okay. Welcome from Iraq. Amir Abdullah. Welcome. Salam, new path to return. What is the midnight sun according to your model? Clearly the earth is curved. As I can see, sun sets without reduction in size. If sun was just moving away from my visibility, they must reduce size. It does actually reduce in size. The only problem is there are conditions that have to be met in the atmosphere, times of the year, if there's no humidity or if there's too much humidity. All of that impacts our observation. Everything goes on a vanishing point. All the painters, artists, they understood this as a physical meaning. That, think about it. You can find pictures where the sun is clearly smaller in the sky as it's setting. But at the same time, it's clearly bigger. Does the sun increase and get smaller in size? It definitely doesn't increase. It definitely is not this like wavy thing. Let me show you. We just don't understand how this works because there is some kind of a container the sun is shining through. We don't even know how the sun works. This is not the size of the sun. It's like a magnifying glass. You put something through water or a glass, like magnifying, it gets bigger even though the thing never changed in size. You see how wavy it is? Like a mirage, like a waviness? This is atmospheric distortion. Clearly, when it's higher in the sky, perfect circle. There's so much information about this. Okay? And the sun will come back into view as you get higher in the sky. I wonder why. It doesn't go over a curve. All right. Let's move on. So, guys, the only place you have a Pacific Ocean, other than the Earth, is the moon. Look at these points here. Sea of Serenity, Sea of Tranquility. Maybe you would call it Peaceful Sea, Pacific Sea. Why on earth do the astronomers and NASA all tell us the moon is just covered with seas? Sea of cold, sea of showers, sea of ocean of storms, sea that has become known, sea of moisture, sea of islands, sea of clouds, sea of vapor, sea of nectar. Where did they get the idea, these dusty craters on the moon, this ball floating around, which you only see one side of, strangely? Why would they call them seas? Why? They'll tell you, the astronomers like Galileo, they just foolishly thought they were oceans, these dark parts. Okay? No. They are aware of what this represents. It's like a photograph of something that's hidden from us. Doesn't the moon you see every night, full moon, doesn't that look like something? Doesn't that look like something really, really glaringly apparent? Like this. If this was removed many, many kilometers away, you would think these are craters. No, this is a Great Barrier Reef. This is a coral reef system in an ocean. Are these craters? Are these impact craters from meteorites? Nope. It's just a different kind of land that is ocean-based. This is coral. Still coral. Many islands. The coral creates an analogous system to the land. It's actually the land beneath our feet in the ocean. There's an ocean above us, a vacuum, then us, then the ocean, and then land on the bed on the bottom. That land comes in the form of coral, mainly. Doesn't this look kind of anatomical as well, as if it's like some kind of a cross-section of a bone? The creatures in the ocean are all signs of the Jinn world. The Jinn world is oceanic. You'll find so many different movies, stories, ideas about this. Have you ever seen the mimic octopus? This amazing creature is a sign of these types of other creatures that are there. They even look like them, like ghosts. And this creature can camouflage very well. I'll show you. This is not a buried octopus. This is an octopus that changed its color to match the sand, concealing Jannah itself. It's in the ocean. They also mimic other species, the shape of other species. Okay, find videos on this stuff. It's amazing. Then we have these things. I kid you guys not, they know about this very well. The people that control the world, they know very well what all these things mean. And they put it in the movies. And we just think it's entertainment. Do you know that these species are some of the most venomous creatures on Earth? Poisonous. In Australia, they can kill somebody in minutes. They also have no body. They're just heads floating around, moving around. If I put, both of them together, I wonder. This is the basic shape or form. This is what UFOs are made to look like, which are associated with jinns. And think about it this way too. They are actually species, admittedly, the only species we know of that are basically immortal. Obviously, nothing is immortal yet. But jellyfish, of all the things that could exist, have a cycle where they reproduce youth. I don't know how it works. They regenerate and they never die. They go again, they repeat their life cycle. They even have jellyfish named after the moon, which I already told you acts like the sun in a totally different way for the hidden creatures. The reason why insan can never be jinn and jinn can never be insan is the name itself. They are concealed by definition. In our world, they're concealed right now. They're probably listening around here. We can't sense them, really. We just can't. So look at the aquatic life. And tell me the real aliens are not based off of that. They even tell you aliens of the deep and all this strange creatures, found in the ocean. The ocean is the most underexplored place possible. It's so vast, especially that ocean. These creatures don't resemble anything like the ones on the land. And it's so interesting because it's the only place where you find the highest concentration of creatures without a spine, invertebrates. They're the most diverse ones. They officially tell you the oldest creatures on Earth, oldest species. Some of them are living fossils, like the coelacanth. This fish is supposed to have existed millions of years ago in the same form. Same with sharks. Sharks have been relatively unchanged for millions of years, perhaps hundreds of millions of years. That's what they tell you. Why? Why does the ocean, why is it associated with longevity and ancient? Because of course, God is going to show us signs of what the real place is like, which we used to access before all the time. But now, nope, not allowed to go anywhere. Not allowed to go anywhere. So now you see why. This is not a dusty ball. It is a light. Allah calls the moon a light. A light for what? It barely illuminates our world. Maybe it's a light for them. And it's a subtle light too, because when you think about it, everyone has caught on pretty much that The moon is a map. But they have clearly forgotten. They didn't factor in that, whoops, this map only appears to be about our world. They've not factored in there's a whole separate world hidden. This and this doesn't look like a whole lot of this. Can you really see the continents of Australia there and North America? And I don't know about you, but I'm a bit suspicious of this. Some of these continents would have to be underwater. And if they are, why wouldn't they appear different on the moon than the ones that we walk on today? There's something very special about why they named these seas. Of course they're going to name them seas. Like the Little Mermaid comes to mind, under the sea. That's where they live, hidden from the humans. Aquaman, and so many things come to mind. There's many films. And this thing here is very interesting to me because in the Quran there is a kind of tree that grows from some kind of a pit, and it's malignant. Khabitha. Good word of your Lord is like a good tree, and a bad word is like a malignant tree, spreading. Jinns are also related to many other things. Look into fungi and what they're about. Yeasts, molds, all this stuff. What you're going to find is these creatures do not operate by the same rules, or at least the rules apply to them very differently. So, yeah, that's a lot of what's going on. Okay, and I hope to really draw a map for you at some point. Even for our side of the world, there's a lot that we don't see. All right, guys. It's over 3 hours, I think. Yeah. So I hope you enjoyed that. And Assalamu alaikum, peace. And may the blessings of Allah be upon you all. Have a great weekend, guys.